I thought providing was enough, but my children needed me, not just my work. That is a hard sentence for a man to say out loud, especially if he has spent most of his life believing that love is proven through effort, responsibility, and sacrifice. I believed that for a long time. I believed that if I worked hard, if I stayed responsible, if I paid the bills, if I kept food in the house and handled what needed handling, then my children would understand what I meant without me having to say much more. I thought they would feel my love in what I carried. I thought they would know what I was doing it all for, and maybe part of them did. But what I did not understand for far too long is that children do not only need a provider, they need a father they can feel. A father who is emotionally there, not just physically present. A father whose face softens when they walk into the room. A father who is not always too busy, too tired, too distracted, too burdened to really meet them where they are. I did not see that clearly when I was younger. I was raised to believe that being a good man meant being dependable, strong, useful, capable of carrying pressure without falling apart. I do not reject those values even now. They matter. A family needs steadiness. It needs responsibility. It needs a man who can hold weight when life gets heavy. But what no one explained to me clearly enough was that responsibility without presence can still leave a child lonely. Effort without tenderness can still feel cold. Work without emotional availability can still create a house where love exists in theory but is not always felt in the daily atmosphere. That was the part I missed. I thought my children would naturally translate my labor into closeness. I thought they would connect the long hours, the tired eyes, the stress I carried, the pressure I absorbed, and say to themselves, "He loves us that much." But children do not always experience love through interpretation. They experience it through contact, through attention, through tone, through time, through whether they feel welcomed when they come toward you, or whether they feel like they are interrupting whatever burden already owns your mind. And too often, if I am honest, they were interrupting it. I was there, but I was not always with them. There is a difference, and it is bigger than most men understand until later. I came home, yes. I ate dinner at the table sometimes, yes. I drove them where they needed to go. I showed up for practical things. I handled the visible parts of fatherhood. But I was tired in ways that made me emotionally thin. I was preoccupied in ways that made me half listen. I was carrying enough internal pressure that warmth often felt like one more thing I had to generate on command. And when a man lives like that long enough, he starts giving his family the leftovers of his inner life while convincing himself that the main thing they need is the roof, the groceries, the payments, the stability. I know why men do this. I really do. The world is hard. Pressure is real. Money does not care how tired you are. Responsibility keeps showing up whether you feel strong that day or not. Many men are carrying far more than they speak about. They are worried about bills, work, failure, respect, the future, the possibility of letting people down. And because of that, they come to believe that the deepest form of love is sacrifice. They think, if I keep carrying all this, my family is protected. And in one sense, that is true. Sacrifice matters. But the mistake is assuming that sacrifice by itself creates emotional connection. It does not. Sometimes sacrifice actually becomes the excuse behind which a man disappears from the people he says he is protecting. That happened to me more than I want to admit. I would tell myself I was doing this for them, and maybe I was. But I was not always giving them what they actually needed from me in the moment. A child does not care very much that you are stressed about a future bill when they are standing in front of you with something they are excited to show you. A child does not experience your hidden love the same way you do when they come to you for connection and meet impatience, distraction, or exhaustion instead. They do not say, "Dad is mentally overloaded because he cares so much about my future." They often feel something much simpler and much sadder. They feel unimportant. They feel like they came at the wrong time. They feel like there is no good moment to fully reach you. That realization hurts me now because I can remember those moments. Not the dramatic ones, the ordinary ones. Those are the ones that stay. A child talking while I was still on my phone. A small story I responded to with half my mind. A question answered too quickly. A weekend where I was physically at home but still mentally carrying work, stress, and everything else. A moment when I chose rest in the form of withdrawal instead of rest in the form of real presence. None of it looked evil. None of it would have seemed like a family breaking. But family life is built in those ordinary moments, and so is distance. That is the hardest truth. Children do not only remember the big moments, they absorb the pattern. They learn your emotional availability over time. They learn whether your face opens or hardens when they approach. They learn whether you are easy to reach or only occasionally accessible. They learn whether they should bring you what matters to them or keep more of it to themselves. And they learn all of that long before they have words for it. I remember when my children were small enough to still light up easily, small enough to come running with a drawing, a story, a question, a feeling, some tiny thing from their world that meant everything to them in that moment. And I wish I could say I always stopped. I wish I could say I always turned fully toward them. I did not. Too often I glanced instead of looked, nodded instead of entered their joy, heard words without hearing the child behind them. I told myself there would be more moments, and there were. But what I did not understand is that children build trust out of accumulated moments. They do not need one perfect day. They need repeated evidence that they matter more than your distraction. There is one memory that still stings. One of my children came to me excited about something small. I cannot even remember now whether it was a school project, a joke, or some story from their day. And that forgetting is part of the pain. What I do remember is the feeling of being burdened already. I remember giving a quick response. I remember not entering the moment with them. I did not yell. I did not reject them. I simply offered a thin version of myself. And if you are a father, you need to understand this. Children can feel the difference between being tolerated and being welcomed. They can feel when your response is polite but absent. And those moments, repeated over years, shape how deeply they keep reaching for you. The same is true as they get older, though it changes form. Little children come with drawings and stories. Older children come with questions, opinions, emotions, hesitation, silence, identity, pain. They test whether you are safe in subtler ways. And if your pattern has already taught them that your inner life is difficult to enter, they stop bringing you the deeper parts of themselves. That is how fathers lose connection without realizing it. Not because they stopped loving, because they stayed emotionally expensive to reach. I became that kind of father at times, loving, yes, responsible, yes, but emotionally expensive. The kind of father who could be counted on in a practical emergency, but not always approached easily in an emotional one. The kind of father whose children respected him, maybe even admired his work ethic, but did not always feel relaxed enough to reveal themselves fully. There is pain in knowing that, because respect is not the same as closeness. Provision is not the same as warmth, and being admired from a distance is a poor substitute for being truly known by your children. I think a lot of men settle for respect because it feels safer than tenderness. Respect is easier to maintain. It asks for competence, not vulnerability, control, not softness. But children need both. They need a father they can look up to, yes, but they also need a father whose presence feels emotionally livable, a father they can laugh with, a father who is not always burdened in a way that darkens the room, a father who lets them feel that being near him is good, not heavy. I did not understand that enough when it mattered most. Part of the reason is that I was tired in ways I never fully processed. I had pressure in me that I did not know how to lay down. I thought being a man meant carrying it silently. So I carried work stress, financial stress, internal stress, private fear, and unspoken disappointment into the home, and then acted surprised when the atmosphere felt strained. But children live inside the emotional weather of a house. They may not understand the source, but they feel the temperature. If your presence is consistently tense, short, checked out, reactive, or drained, they adapt to that climate. They shrink around it. They learn to time themselves around it. They become careful in places where they should feel free. That realization breaks my heart now because I know I was not trying to make them careful. I was trying to keep them safe. But intention is not the same as atmosphere. A man can love deeply and still create emotional distance if he does not govern what he brings into the room. That is why fatherhood is not only about what you provide materially. It is about what kind of environment your nervous system creates around the people who live with you. And then there is the tragedy of deferred presence. I believed for too long that I could be more available later. Later when work became less demanding. Later when the money pressure eased. Later when the kids were older and I was less stretched. Later when I had more energy. But children do not stay where you left them emotionally. They keep moving. Their needs change. Their trust deepens or thins. Their habits of coming to you or not coming to you become set. A father who keeps postponing emotional presence may one day discover that his children no longer reach the way they once did. And by then he misreads it as independence when sometimes it is adaptation. That is one of the saddest sentences I know now. They stopped needing less of me because they grew, but they also stopped expecting some things from me because I had not been there in those ways enough. That hurts, because fathers often wake up to this late. We think we are doing the hard part. We are earning, enduring, carrying, staying, and we are. But while we are doing that, our children are forming their inner map of us. Are we safe? Are we warm? Are we rushed? Are we available? Are we easy to disappoint? Are we easy to approach? Are we present when they are not efficient, not polished, not at their best? That map gets drawn in the small moments, not only on birthdays or holidays or big talks, in Tuesday evenings, car rides, bedtime conversations, the 10 seconds after they say your name, the look on your face when they interrupt your thought, the tone you use when you are tired. I wish someone had told me more clearly that children interpret your tone more deeply than your explanation. You can say, "I'm doing this all for you," but if your daily energy makes them feel like a burden, the explanation will not land the way you want. They may understand you more as adults. They may even forgive you generously. But while they are children, they are not measuring your sacrifice in adult categories. They are measuring your presence in lived experience. That truth forced me to confront something painful. In my desire to provide a better life, I sometimes failed to give them the father they needed inside the life we already had. And it was not just my children. It affected the whole home. Because when a man is emotionally absent, the burden often shifts. The mother carries more emotional weight. The children adjust. The house becomes more functional than connected. Love may still be there, but ease fades. Spontaneity fades. Emotional honesty fades. People start working around the father's depletion instead of resting inside his steadiness. And a man can tell himself he is the backbone of the family while unknowingly becoming one of its emotional blind spots. I do not say this with cruelty toward myself. I understand why I became that man in certain seasons. I was trying. I was pressured. I was human. But understanding the reason does not erase the cost. Good intentions are not enough if your habits keep teaching the people you love to expect less of your heart than they deserve. If I could go back, I would not only work hard, I would work differently. I would protect more energy for home. I would stop acting as if my family should simply understand the version of me that always arrived depleted. I would become more aware of the face I brought through the door. I would put down what could wait. I would lower my voice more quickly. I would ask more questions before offering advice. I would create more moments where my children felt that being with them was not another demand on me, but a joy. I would understand that delight is part of fatherhood, not an optional extra. I would also tell my younger self this: your children do not need a perfect father. They need an emotionally reachable one. They do not need endless speeches. They need repeated signals that their inner world matters to you. They do not need your constant performance of strength. They need enough softness to know that your strength is safe to live near. And I would tell him one more painful truth. Children eventually grow up and make sense of you in ways you cannot control. They may love you deeply. They may respect what you sacrificed. They may even thank you for all you carried. But some part of them may still ache for the father who was there in body and burden, but not always fully available in spirit. That ache is real, and if you are wise, you will respect it before it has to become memory. I thought providing was enough, but my children needed me, not just my work. They needed my attention, my warmth, my patience, my curiosity, my emotional steadiness, my ability to enter their world before it closed. My face, not only my labor, my listening, not only my sacrifice, my presence, not only my protection. So if you are a father listening to me now, let me say this as clearly as I can. Keep providing. Keep being responsible. Keep standing up under pressure. But do not make the mistake I made. Do not assume your work will speak the whole language of your love. Come home in more than one way. Let your children feel that your heart is not always elsewhere. Let them interrupt you and still find welcome. Let them grow up with the memory that your presence made the room lighter, not heavier. Because one day they will remember the atmosphere more than the explanation. And by then you will want them to remember not only how hard you worked, but how deeply they were loved while you were with them.